Captain America Civil War was an amazing movie. Top 3 Marvel movie for sure. Depending on how you feel about the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy, it might be number 1. But there was one criticism of the movie floating around the internet that I happen to agree with. And that was related to Daniel Bruhl's character, Zemo. Now, I think Bruhl gave an incredible performance. He added more depth to the character than any Marvel villain yet, besides maybe Loki. It's just that as a character, Zemo was this meticulous puppet master genius who creates a plan that is so full of these gigantic holes. And we've had a lot of movies in the last 8 or 9 years, like Skyfall or The Dark Knight, or even Avengers, where the villain has this ridiculously complicated scheme that relies on so many coincidences that the scheme itself doesn't really make any sense, and it never should have worked from the start. Zemo's scheme is one of those schemes. There are a lot of things that just randomly go right for him, that lead him into the next step, and then another thing just randomly goes right for him. And while that doesn't make it a bad movie, wouldn't it be cool if Zemo actually had a really complicated and interesting plan that he laid out piece by piece by piece, and they all executed perfectly? Because instead of him just getting really lucky, he's actually amazing at this. And I think if you change one thing about the movie, Zemo can have that kind of plan. I even think we can go far enough to say that at some point, this was in the script, and they took out the big reveal, but they left everything else, so you can really see how this would have happened. And my theory is that Zemo wasn't acting alone. Zemo was part of a team. And Zemo and the other member of this team worked together to manipulate the Avengers and the world governments into doing exactly what they wanted. So I'm going to show you 5 specific things from the movie and 1 thing from comics, and I think you'll at least understand where I'm coming from. Alright, so once the movie starts, there's this gigantic ideological rift between Cap and Iron Man over whether or not they should sign the Sokovia Accords. Basically a document that polices enhanced individuals. The rest of the Avengers align with Cap or Iron Man. They all fight in an airport. It's wonderful. Hashtag choose a side. Hashtag Doritos. But there's one interesting difference between the sides. Iron Man's team is made up of people who have a deep agreement with what Tony is saying. War Machine respects the UN's decision. Black Widow wants a hand on the wheel. Vision thinks that power leads to catastrophe. Black Panther thinks that Winter Soldier should be brought to justice. Spider-Man's just happy to be invited. But when you look at Cap's team, it's not the same kind of thing. There's 2 groups the heroes fall into. It's either, I feel guilty about a horrible thing that I've done, or, you're Captain America, I'll help you beat up Iron Man, you're great. So what's interesting is that none of the other 5 members of Team Cap agree with Steve on this deep philosophical level about the Accords. But there is one other character that tells Steve what he's doing is right and he has to keep going, and that's Sharon Carter. At Peggy Carter's funeral, she quotes her aunt in that famous line from the Civil War comic that's actually a quote from Mark Twain about how you have to plant yourself like a tree at the river of truth and tell everyone, no, you move. And she's not just saying it because it's something Peggy always used to say. She's looking directly at Captain America and saying, I agree with you, Peggy would agree with you, don't sign the Accords. And it connects with him on a really emotional level. Sharon Carter is what Steve has been waiting for, a character who's going to tell him directly signing the Accords is the wrong thing to do. And you could make the case that if this didn't happen, Steve might sign. He's the leader of the team, he doesn't want the Avengers broken up. Maybe Tony could make a good enough case and this whole thing could be over. And isn't it convenient for Zemo that Cap decides not to sign? By the time Zemo goes and impersonates Bucky, Steve and Tony are already fighting, and this situation that they probably could have solved together is only going to make their fighting worse, which is exactly what Zemo wants. So fast forward, Zemo bombs the UN dressed as Bucky, so Bucky will get flushed out of hiding and then captured. So Zemo can mind control him and get the information. But the key thing that Zemo's leaving up to chance is that Bucky will get captured. When Steve finds Bucky, he tells him that the police are coming and they're not planning on taking him alive. And also, unbeknownst to Zemo, the Black Panther is also out for revenge and he could very easily kill Bucky too. It's only because Steve is able to get to Bucky literally minutes before everyone else does that they are able to fight their way out of the building and Bucky gets caught alive and ends up within reach of Zemo. And the only reason Steve knows where to look for Bucky is that someone tells Steve exactly where Bucky is hiding, and that person is Sharon Carter. Alright, so let's fast forward a little bit. Zemo gets what he wants and he's gone. But then Bucky's on that mind-controlled rampage. He's beating up everyone in sight. At this point in the plan, Steve needs to recapture Bucky so Bucky can tell Steve where the Siberia base is. But while Bucky's escaping, Steve doesn't know where to look for him. But then who comes in and tells Steve where he can find Bucky? Sharon Carter. Now I realize this isn't hugely significant, but this is another moment in the movie where Zemo needs something to go one way, and Sharon Carter just happens to move the plot in that direction. So the second half of the movie is leading towards this airport fight. It's going to be Cap's team versus Iron Man's team. For Zemo's plan to work, Cap and Bucky have to get out of here. There aren't really a lot of other things that have to happen. Falcon getting captured is good. Iron Man and Cap fighting is also helpful, but not completely necessary, just because they're going to do that later anyway. But when you look at the way the teams stand before the fight, there is no reason to assume that Iron Man's team isn't going to just demolish Cap's team. And that's at full strength. Keep in mind, Cap and Falcon both got their gear taken from them when they got arrested. Luckily, who shows up with their equipment but Sharon Carter? She gives them the shield and the bird costume back so they're able to better contend with Iron Man's team, and while they ultimately lose, Cap and Bucky escape and make it to the Siberia base in time to confront Zemo. Now, these are all things that happen within the universe of the movie. I want to talk about something that only happens on film. So there's this thing in movies called an answer cut. It's in the MCU movies more than a couple times. For instance, in the beginning of the first Avengers movie, Loki, Hawkeye, and Selvig are escaping as the facility's getting destroyed. Coulson radios Fury and asks, what are we gonna do? Fury looks into the distance and then the title comes up, Avengers. That's the answer to Coulson's question, what are we going to do? We're going to assemble the Avengers. Guardians also has one. The team gets to know where Gamora tells everyone that they have to wait for the Collector. Drax asks, well, what are we supposed to do until then? Cut to everyone gambling and drinking and having fun. Sometimes it's not as straightforward as that, but generally it's editing to answer a question. So I bring this up because when Black Widow is propositioning Panther to join Iron Man's team, she tells him that there's no way he's going to be able to find Bucky on his own. When Black Panther realizes what she's saying, he asks, you know where to find him? To which she replies, I know someone who does. Cut to Sharon Carter. Now I know you're saying this might be circumstantial, but this is a really strange way to edit this scene for two reasons. One, we never find out who Black Widow was talking about. Two, that scene could have started in a million different ways. It could have just been Captain America, Falcon, and Bucky rolling up in that tiny beetle. It's a very specific shot of Sharon Carter that might lead you to assume that she's the one that told Iron Man's team where to find Cap's team. Now, why would Zemo want that? He might want to thin the teams out. There are so many heroes and so many people really close to Cap and Iron Man that maybe if all of them got to the Siberia base, Rhodey would have been able to talk Tony down, or Vision would have been able to literally stand in front of them and stop them from fighting. Plus, this big airport fight that happened does lead to some pretty specific consequences that cripple the Avengers forever. Vision's all mopey, War Machine can't walk anymore, the rest of the Avengers are in jail. Watch the scene with Black Widow again, followed by the scene with Cap and Sharon Carter. See if you don't kind of get that impression. Well, right now you're probably saying, this is all well and good, but this would be a huge departure, not only from the Sharon Carter we know from Winter Soldier, but also just from the Sharon Carter comics. The thing about that is, it's not. So Civil War is this comic event that took place around 2008, where Cap and Iron Man get into a fight over the Superhuman Registration Act. Kind of similar, it's what the movie's based on, although pretty loosely. Sharon Carter's kind of involved, but she doesn't play a very large part. But Civil War was immediately followed by the Death of Captain America storyline, where Crossbones shoots Captain America on the steps of Capitol Hill as he's being arrested for the events of Civil War. What we later learn is that Crossbones' sniper shot is actually a distraction, so another character can get close enough to Captain America to shoot and kill him, and that character is, I swear to you, Sharon Carter. So during that storyline, it's revealed that Red Skull had kidnapped her. Dr. Faustus, who you may remember from Agent Carter, that guy that hypnotizes people, he had mind-controlled Sharon Carter to work as a sleeper agent for Hydra. She had no idea and eventually turned out to be responsible for the death of Captain America. So you can look at this theory two ways. You can say maybe Sharon was on Zemo's team from the beginning, he just explained his plan to her, she said, oh yeah, the Avengers are bad, I have to fight them. Or maybe Zemo figured out that Sharon Carter was a previously mind-controlled Hydra agent, reactivated her, and used her to carry out bits of the plan. Now, there are some holes with this. The big one is, if Sharon Carter was a Hydra sleeper agent, then why, during the events of the Winter Soldier, was she not aligned with Hydra? Wouldn't they have activated her and used her to kill Captain America? Maybe? It seems like in Winter Soldier, things were moving too fast for that to be a viable option. And the other obvious criticism is that at no point does Sharon Carter turn out to be a mind-controlled Hydra agent. But I do think that at some point this was in the script and it got taken out. Maybe Marvel didn't want Captain America's new love interest to be evil. Maybe the Russo brothers didn't want to have another character turn out to be a secret Nazi, since they already did secret Nazis in Winter Soldier. Maybe they're saving that kind of reveal for the death of Captain America's storyline, which the Russo brothers have acknowledged they kind of considered, but not really, for Civil War. Because realistically, even if Cap died, there's no one that wouldn't have believed he was going to come back for Infinity Wars in like a year. Listen, watch the movie again. Try to imagine that at this Siberia base fight, Zemo shows Iron Man the footage. He explains what he's doing. I wanted to see the Avengers crumble from within. And then he says, and I had someone on the inside, and Sharon Carter walks out. Would that have been any crazier? I don't think so. Would that have made Zemo a more competent and interesting villain? I think it would. Anyway, that's my opinion. If you agree or if you disagree, let me know in the comments section. Like the video, share it with people you think might find it interesting. Share it with the Russo brothers. Share it with Chris Evans, Emily Van Camp, Daniel Bruhl. Don't harass them or anything, but they're the only people that would know if this is true, so maybe ask them. Also, I have a podcast called Mad Bracket Status. We make pop culture brackets. If you enjoyed the video, give it a listen. It's fun. I might make more of these. I've got an idea for something similar related to Batman v Superman, so keep an eye out for that, and follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm at Nationof Nando. That's all I've got. See you next time.